Yes, it's on. Oh well. Hello. You're in the unemployed. Hello, peoples. How are you doing? It's a pretty nice day, actually. I'm liking it. It's Sunday. It's windy. The cold chill is coming in. It must be nice all around the sun belt here of the United States, of course. And all the holidays over. Alright, guys, pack it up. Time to get back to work. Time to put the trains on, the police, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the construction workers, wherever you may be in the position of professionalism. It's time to get back to work. It's time to innovate. It's time to graduate. It's time to regulate. Of course, there's always regulations. When aren't there regulations? This weather's got me feeling something different, man. It's starting to feel like 2000 all over again. Of course, I'm out here recording because I didn't want to stay in my room, in my house, because I know I was just gonna veg out, watch YouTube, and slack off. And I've been slacking off on my videos, of course, but I do have an excuse. Of course, I'm ready for the excuse train. I think I've already said it in my other videos, though. Is started a new job, and I'm getting used to the schedule. The good old 9 to 5, 8 to 4, and it's weird. It's weird doing that again. It's weird being on a normal schedule, where I had to get up with the rest of the normie conformities, get up with the chillins, get on to school, fight the traffic, and do all that good stuff. Although I'm never really fighting through traffic, I'm more fighting traffic trying to run me over, because, well, I'm on a scooter. I'm generally slower than most people. They're not having issues with their vehicles. And oh man, I'm trying to keep the thoughts organized right now. But like I said, I want to be outside, man, right now, because I spent yesterday, generally weekends, especially when you get a schedule, because generally weekends are just spent getting ready to go back to work, go out to Monday. It's very efficient, but I understand what it is, especially from what I'm doing. You know, you have to work with contractors, plumbers, construction workers, you know, and everybody has to be on a schedule. Everybody has to work in lockstep, work in tandem, to keep the regulars happy, to keep the contractors happy, to keep the people that have invested their money into building structures and keeping things going happy. And it is what it is. And at some point I might even be on call, because this is the nature of the job. You know, a power line gets knocked down, I gotta get called out there. You know, water main bursts, I gotta get called out there. You know, just regular, normal nature things that happen to the infrastructure that is modern life, especially with the internet line gets, you know, cut or backed into, or they gotta install a new internet line. I gotta get called out there. Well, at least my crew or job, the people that work with me, gotta get called out there. And the weekend is where you get to relax. Well, you're not relaxing. Once again, you're preparing for the next week. And I think I'm just going to be like this for a while. Nothing else is really hiring. I got all those certifications and whatnot for nothing. So none of my certifications are being used to actually do this job. Yes, you're starting from the bottom, and it sucks. And there are other people that started with me in this class that are in the same boat. In fact, I think I'm doing a little bit better than most people in my class because a lot of them had to come from out of the city, out of town to be here. They got a long few hours ride back home to the next city over, which sucks for them. They're staying in hotels, burning money, which once again sucks for them. But it seems like a chill job. Well, no, it seems like a very stressful job. It's just chill now because it's in the training phase. But before I dive too deep into that, I just want to know how you guys are doing. Once again, I'm just out here enjoying life. Once again, talking about the weekend. I'm just enjoying this weekend for what it is because I know next week's going to be in the field, and that's where the real rubber meets the road. And it's interesting that I'll get back into schedule, get back into thinking like this, and I'm going to actually be even worse with the schedule on YouTube because generally when you get into, at least for me, when you get into schedules like this, you get comfortable. You get comfortable making a steady check and you don't think about, ventures outside of your normal job. In fact, with a job like this, they want you to be in their ecosystem as much as possible, entrenched in it. They don't pay a living wage. It's under $20 an hour, which $20 an hour doesn't even cut it these days. But once again, you're starting from the bottom. That's just how it goes. Nobody else is calling me back. Supposedly so much work in security. You get a job like nothing, but that's a lie. That was a lie. Applied to a couple of security companies. In fact, I doubt this one I'm working with now was a security company. And it's not. I think I explained that in the previous video. And once again, the weekend is just me trying to get other people out of my way so I can do my job on Monday. Called this guy to come pick up a vehicle in the yard so I could have some room for my work truck. And they gave me the run around, of course. I wasted a good 5 hours, 6 hours, pretty much half the day yesterday on Saturday, waiting for this guy to show up. Never did. So I'm still stuck with a car in my yard that I don't work. I can't put my truck there for work. And sucks. Just one of those things you gotta roll with. And once again, they got on the excuse train why they couldn't do the job. The car wasn't immediately available to them. They had to dig it out from behind two other cars that, once again, don't work. Are just in the yard. And although, you have a tow truck, insurance rules everything about anything involving other people. So, you gotta figure out, you gotta spend another weekend, figuring out how to get that car out the yard. Probably spend some money putting wheels on it so I can actually roll it. And that's gonna suck. That's where my check's gonna go. Yay, first check. Gotta wait 2 weeks for a check, and most of us gotta go to putting money into getting this job that doesn't pay anything. Such is life. I guess the rest of my weekend will be spent washing clothes. Oh, the rest of my yesterday was spent fixing the motorcycle because I've been running the brakes off the thing. Been putting it on the freeway. Mostly because I thought it was going to be late. So I knew it had the capability of doing at least 60. I managed to keep it put it up at 65. I don't like to keep it there. Generally, what I do is I get behind a truck, a work truck, something big and slow, and just ride it out until they get off, and then gun it, gun it to 65 and hope nobody runs me over. It's kind of a harrowing adventure, but it's basically what I built this motorcycle for anyways. Yeah, I don't like it keeping it up at the upper limit of its RPM band, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? The job is always a city over and low pay. At least that seems to be the going trend in this year, these last few years, at least. But once again, the weekends are just. Let me know if you guys experience this. The weekends just you getting back to Monday. And I know somebody else on YouTube is saying, I'm not saying anything, revolutionary. I'm not saying anything nobody has observed already. I'm just a guy out here trying not to get sucked into the void that is YouTube. Trying to stay productive. Now, that's questionable whether this is productive. Well, it breaks the cycle at least. It breaks the cycle of me just sitting around watching interesting stuff on YouTube that could be real, could be factual, could be not, like the protests in Iran that I probably talked about last video. Apparently, those are just fake. If you ask which source, depending on what source you ask, that's just fake propaganda by the three-letter agency in America. They're out there starting stuff again for no reason. Because they have to have a reason to actually ask for that. Was it $500 billion? They want another $500 billion added to the budget, the military budget. Now that's factual. That's actual fact. When does the military not want more money to do weird stuff? Sorry. To do crazy stuff all around the world and be in everybody's pockets. Right now we're fighting Venezuela for God knows whatever reasons. Everybody and their moms watching it, throwing out conspiracies and whatnot. What's fact, what's actual not, who knows. All we know is that there are bombs being dropped on the place, and the American government wants something. They're here to spread freedom. They're there to spread freedom. Now, we do know Venezuela somehow has all these natural resources, all this actual wealth, all this tangible physical assets, and they never got to use them because of the quote-unquote regime. Now, some of them are dancing, some of them are happy that the old regime is out, the old guard is out, that was stopping them from using these assets. Well, I got news for you, buddy. The new regime is not going to be much better. They're just going to be a little bit quieter about how they go about it. But, back to my life. Back to what's happening here in the US of A. Hanging out with a few of my coworkers, getting to know their lives, getting to know their stories and stuff. I hear little bits and pieces here and there. And we had this guy. He's not a trainee. He's actually been in the field. They had to retrain him because he's coming from out of town. I don't know why they had to retrain him, but since he has current knowledge, not like the teacher that hasn't been in the field had a couple of years, he has current knowledge. We get a little bit of edge in our class when we ask him questions of what's actually going on and what actually is what, because this job is setting up to be super stressful, as there are a lot of gotchas, there's a lot of hidden tactics, there's a lot of things that can get you that last ride home. There are a lot of things that can flatline you and send you to not a ride home, but a ride in a casket. And they say it's nice to have them. It's nice to get some points, tips, general things that we wouldn't have known otherwise in the field. We just have to figure out ourselves. But I might be on call at some point. I might be. We do get a work truck, like I said earlier. I might be on call. And things is, like I said, this job might just take up all my time. And YouTube will probably be on the back burner for quite some time because of the nature of the job. We're talking probably not at the beginning, but they're looking about 3 months out. You're talking about 10-hour days minimal because there's plenty of overtime as always, as things don't always work correctly when you're working with contractors and construction workers. And of course, the queue for actual work is you're always behind. There's always more work. They say it evens out eventually at the end of the week, but there's always more work. You're always behind. You're always stressed. And once again, it's a routine that is going to leave very little time outside of work to do anything else. Now, focusing back on this guy, he said something that I wanted to make this video about, and is the main topic, is that he found out the hard way that generally making more money doesn't always mean you're making more money. Now, you're probably asking, what does that mean? If I'm making more currency, I should have more currency. That's the given. Currency is time. Currency is other people's time. You can trade that time for other people's time, and that's generally how this economy works. It's a circular economy. You don't get to keep any of that money, of course. It just goes to other people eventually. That's if you even see anything. But in order to get more currency, you generally either have to put in a lot of time into the company, or you generally have to move up in rank. And becoming something like a manager or something doesn't necessarily mean this makes more money. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be compensated, especially on salary, compensated for all your time. Like I say, you're compensated for 10 hours a day. You may work 12. And sure, you were making $25 an hour. I don't know how cheap this company's going to be. Let's say you were making $25 an hour instead of the below 20 that we're going to be starting off at. According to the other managers that come in there, they're available 24/7. So your workday really just never stops for the pittance that you get. Now, they didn't say necessarily what they're making as a manager, but I can tell you, none of those people were happy with it. In fact, they highly discouraged anyone with less than 5 years of work and hasn't been established to not become a manager, because then you don't get overtime. And overtime is where all the actual currency is made. In fact, the workers, the locators, are actually the ones that make all the currency. They actually, if you work 80 hours a week, yeah, you can make six figures. Now, are you going to get to keep all those six figures? No. The government's going to tax the ever-living snot out of that because you're a W-2 worker. But on paper, you're going to have been generating more currency. Now, in the current year, there's a billion ways that you can lose your currency. And there's some baked in that automatically get taken out before you even see your currency that you've generated from trading your time for work. And I think that's the biggest lesson from this guy that I wanted to touch on. Just because you're making six figures doesn't mean you're doing well. And a lot of people are starting to figure that out, especially in 2020, especially through 2025. And I don't think it's going to extend to 2026 and 2027. And of course, it's nothing new. People have known this for quite some time. But if you're a W-2 and you're making, six figures, you're not exactly doing that great. In fact, most of the time when you're going to be making six figures, they're going to have some of that's going to be in stocks. Especially if you start making over six figures, that's going to be invested in the company. And stocks, they're going to try to put the golden handcuffs on you. You may be able to make six figures, but that's only if the company, well, above six figures, that's only if the company does well. And you can exit out of those stocks at a good time. And this is a lesson for this video. Otherwise, if you guys have any lessons out there for the new year, for all you carpenters, all you welders, all you just general people that do actual work, let me know in the comments, and I'll update you guys in this void in the next installment.